Emotional content is filmed on Whadjuk Noongar land. This podcast acknowledges the traditional owners and custodians of country. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Before I start, a little disclaimer. The following episode contains personal stories and reflections shared from my perspective. While I do not mention names, I understand that some listeners familiar with my history may infer the identities of individuals discussed. Please note that this content is based on my personal experiences and interpretations. It is not intended to harm, defame, or discredit anyone. Details have been shared thoughtfully and respectfully, and certain aspects may have been altered for privacy reasons. This podcast is for informational and storytelling purposes only. Come for the stories, stay for the connection. I'm your host, Amy Jane Brand, and this is your weekly dose of emotional content. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Emotional Content. I'm actually filming this on a pretty significant day. It is the 19th year that my dad passed away on December 6th. And the episode that I'm recording today as well is pretty deep. So it's something that I had not addressed properly online. And it's been a long time coming talking about this. It happened years ago, back in 2020. It's now 2025. And it's something that I didn't want to speak about at the time for various reasons, but this happened so long ago and I've done a lot of healing since. I don't have the emotion attached to it like I would have if I spoke out about this at the time. So even though there was things that were holding me back from talking about it, which you'll find out soon, it was a good thing that I didn't talk about it at the time because emotions were high, and I think it just would have been damaging on both sides if I spoke about it at the time with having so much feeling attached to it still. So now feels like the right time, and there's also a lot of lessons that I learned in this, and the big message behind this is to show you just how fake social media can actually be. I talk about being really transparent and cutting through the facade of Instagram a lot on this podcast. And I was extremely guilty of fabricating how this particular relationship was online. Well, behind closed doors, I made it look like it was so much better than it actually was online. So the message really behind this episode is that you just really don't know what's going on behind closed doors. And when you're sitting there feeling like shit, comparing, maybe your relationship is going through a rough patch, or you want to be in a relationship and you're seeing all of these perfect curated relationships online making you feel like shit, I just wanted to shed some light on just how artificial it can actually be. And I feel like this might not be with everybody, but I feel like the ones that are posting constantly about how great their relationship are probably aren't being very truthful, coming from somebody that did that for years. So some, might be in a really good place, but I think the majority of relationships aren't necessarily as good as they look online. So that's what this episode is about. I wanted to just give people a reality check and just know that not everything that you see online is real. And I think that's a pretty obvious statement, but when you're feeling like shit and you're doom scrolling, sometimes you just need a reminder that, this shit isn't real. So that's what this episode is about. And I just wanted to reiterate that I'm very, very happy now with my relationship. My partner is aware that this is an episode that I wanted to do, and he's completely supporting me and speaking my truth on that. So yeah, it's not an episode to be bashing my ex. It's just to talk about it in a way of lessons that were learned and just giving you some insight. And also, so many of you keep asking me about it. Every time I do a Q&A, everyone is always asking me what happened with that relationship. Oh my gosh, I couldn't even get away from it. I stopped doing Q&As in the end when it first happened because that's all people were asking me. So now you're going to finally get your fucking answers. So let's get into the episode. So this relationship really affected my life obviously, at the time. And it taught me some really significant lessons that I wanted to share with you. But before I start with that, I am going to give you a bit of an insight as to how our relationship started and what that actually looked like, because a lot of people were under the assumption that I met this guy in Hollywood, and I did not. Our life was very different when we first started dating, and it did not look like what people's perceptions of us were. So we actually met through who I was dating prior to him, which was a DJ. And that DJ worked for a band called Bombs Away. I don't know if you guys are going to remember. This is really throwing it back like 10 years now. It was the two guys, Sketch and Tommy. And then it was my ex. So when I ended things with my previous boyfriend, I had been friends with my ex for quite some time at this point. And when I moved back from LA, I decided to move to Brisbane to get out of Sydney when I ended things with the previous guy. And that's pretty much where things started with me and my now ex. That's all sounding very confusing, but I don't want to use actual names. But yeah, we ended up not long after that. I was living in Brisbane, he was living in Brisbane, and things just kind of went from there. We were living paycheck to paycheck. I was actually surviving off of a big Protein World contract. I don't know if you guys even remember that product, but it was like I don't know if they're still around, to be honest, but it was one of the biggest like protein companies to first hit on social media. And I was getting paid a really decent amount each month. So I was paycheck to paycheck on that and some other smaller jobs at the time. And then my ex was actually a diesel mechanic at a company that his dad worked for. So he was a diesel mechanic and was also drumming on YouTube, which was something that he was doing, had a really big following on there. I obviously had my following as well. So we had some relatability when it came to, the things that we were doing online. But yeah, we were living in a very modest little 1-by-1 apartment in Hamilton Harbour, which is on the water in Brisbane. And at the start, we were literally eating off of one of our removal boxes and just using that as a table and sitting around it, eating some pizza. Like, we did not start off with money. We didn't have much help at the time. We were just starting from scratch. And I guess social media wasn't reflecting that at all. That's not something that we were really sharing online. But obviously, you don't share that you're eating off of a pizza box like long term. You would do that when you've just moved in, but we just did that for like longer than we probably should have. So yeah, we were living like a very simplistic life at the time, but our followings with what we were doing, we just never were honest about how that looked. So we both had really mutual interests. I wanted to get into DJing, and he obviously was in the music industry as well. I think looking back, we were very good when it came to work and working on projects together. Not so much the actual connection between us, but when it came to work, we did gel, and our compatibility was stronger there than it was, an actual connection in relationship. Early on into the relationship, there was some red flags. And looking back, I was very much love bombed by this guy, and I didn't know what love bombing was at the time. I was very unaware of it. I just thought, oh my gosh, like, he's so into me. And I didn't see what I would call, or my perspective was, the manipulations in that at the time. Looking back at it, I had not been love bombed previously. So I wasn't sure what to look out for at that point either. I just genuinely thought that this person was really interested in me. However, there was some red flags early on, and it was causing trust issues very early on into the relationship. The first year, there was already trust issues. I caught him on multiple occasions speaking to girls what I would consider inappropriate. It was like spreading his emotional attention to other women, and I was catching it out, and I did start to become like very on edge about who he was talking to. So that made me really uncomfortable, and I lost trust very quickly within the relationship, which did not help things at all. There is one instance that I will speak about because this actually destroyed a friendship that I had for years. This was my best friend at the time. We do not talk anymore and I don't plan on us speaking again. I don't have any hate or any bad feelings towards this person. It's just our lives don't align. Anyway, I was about to move over to LA with my ex, and I had had multiple arguments with my ex at the time about other girls and things that I had seen and felt uncomfortable about. My old best friend was aware of this, and it came to my attention, I would say a month before getting ready to literally move countries together. My old best friend decides to tell me that she actually received inappropriate messages from my ex, who was my boyfriend at the time. And when I said to her, what were the messages? She said, it was on Snapchat and he was just saying some dirty things to me and I told him it was inappropriate and I thought I would tell you about it. Mind you, she was telling me about it when I was literally about to move countries with the guy, and she didn't give me any evidence of what had happened. And I feel like if I had been given the evidence of that at the time, like cold hard evidence, I don't know whether I would have changed my decision on moving to America, but it would have been really nice to have been given cold hard evidence of being emotionally cheated on, which is what I would call it. And she didn't do that. She just told me about it weeks later and said it very blasé as well. It just came up in conversation. And her excuse was, I didn't bother saying anything because it's not like you would leave him anyway. And I think that's really fucked up on obviously his behalf, but also hers. And I just want to say that if anyone does that to you, I feel like your friend should be choosing you and not giving a fuck about what your partner thinks. Like, I don't care about any of this anymore. Like, don't get it twisted. Like, I literally do not even think about this. But I feel like if your friend's partner hits you up inappropriately, black and white, no argument, you should be screenshotting that and sending it to your friend, because your friend should always be the main priority. And if that doesn't happen, I don't know, that feels like a red flag. Like, what was the real conversation, or what did you say on your end? Why weren't you confident enough to screenshot that and tell me immediately? If you're so concerned that this guy isn't good for me, then why wouldn't you show me point blank what they did? So that didn't happen. Obviously, I didn't get that. It was just hearsay from both sides. He had horrible things to say about her. And yeah, I ended up completely cutting off that friendship, because whether he did that or not, which I believe that he did, 100%, I absolutely believe that he did, because I do believe in what she was saying, and that's what sucked. That's why not getting that evidence fucking, hurt. But I couldn't trust her anymore. And it was like just kind of throwing me this information to just cause a huge amount of problems without the evidence. So I lost a best friend out of this relationship, and that really fucking hurt as well. And I was very resentful for a long time after that with him, because, I lost that friendship and it just really hurt at the time. And looking back at it now, I still stand by my decision by cutting her off, but I wish I cut him off as well, because it would have saved me a lot of fucking heartache. So then there's moving to LA. I made this look like I was living the fucking dream. And I feel like that was the only pleasure I really got out of the experience. I met some incredible people and I actually had some really fun experiences over there. But when it came to the way that my relationship was and where I was living, that was completely fabricated. If you have been to America and you've been to Los Angeles, downtown LA, if you have been there, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't and you're interested, Google Los Angeles Skid Row and you will see what I lived so closely to. And when I tell you the difference, because when I first moved to America on my own, I was in Hollywood and there is some really sketchy situations there, but honestly, nothing compared to downtown LA. The culture shock that I received when we had moved down there was diabolical. It was so dangerous. I actually had a friend come and try and meet me in broad daylight, and she got mugged on the street and couldn't come to my apartment. It was so dangerous walking down to the shops to go to Whole Foods and get the groceries was terrifying. It was not a pleasant place to live. It was waking up all different times of the morning, 3 a.m. to people screaming, homeless people fighting. I saw 2 homeless people shagging on top of a trolley and woke me up. Like, it was just full on. It really is a culture shock compared to Australia. Anyway, have a look online and you'll understand what I'm talking about. So we moved downtown LA for the only reason of my ex needing a cheaper studio to be able to put his drum kit in and practice 4+ hours every single day. That is why we moved down there instead of like West Hollywood area straight away, because he was paying for the rent, and rightly so. He was on a huge contract with the Chainsmokers. I was still earning AUD at that point as well, because agencies weren't prepared to pay US dollars if my following was majority in Australia. So I wasn't going to land those USD deals. So yeah, he was on a big contract with the Chainsmokers and paying for the rent. Fair. I wanted to be in a loft because I just loved the way that they looked, and more of the lofty kind of vibes, industrial look is in downtown. So it made sense. So that's what we did. And the apartment looked awesome. The concrete, shiny floors, the really high ceilings, you know, the white industrial pipes on the walls and stuff. Like, it looked awesome, but it was not what I made it look like online. It was really scary. I spent a lot of time by myself in downtown because he was always away on tour, or he would go up for the day up to West Hollywood, which was like an hour plus Uber before he got a fucking car. Like, it was just outrageous. Every single day, we didn't spend much time together. It took a huge toll on the relationship. He was so, and probably still is today, I have no fucking idea, but extremely work focused to the point where there is no space for another person. And I came second at all times. And that was to his, you know, new career with the Chainsmokers especially as well. So the relationship was not as strong as we made it look. If anything, it was extremely easily destroyed. There was quite a lot of competition between us as well, which is not healthy in a relationship. And I have never experienced that in any other relationship I have been in. And this was going back actually to when we were living in Brisbane. I was picking up jobs really quickly because of my following, and I was a fucking good DJ. So the two paired together, I was getting bookings. I could pull crowds. It's point blank. That's what it is. And he was struggling with his new band that he had just developed with one of his friends. They were pulling some kind of crowd, but it wasn't as easy as what it was for me when I started DJing. So there was some tension building up there between us as well. And I fucking would never be in that position again, because being competitive in each other's careers is like not a place where you want to be. And I think because he had been working so long and so hard at drumming, me just being able to walk into a DJ career where I was getting paid good money was extremely insulting to him. So it caused a lot of tension between us. So going back to LA, I curated everything to look just like we were an amazing couple. We had fan pages, we had people making artwork of us. And honestly, I only ended up getting any sort of joy from that relationship from other people thinking how good it was, which is really fucked up to say. I also really wanted to be in America too. Like, this was originally my dream to be in America. It's not anymore. I'm very happy in Perth, guys, don't worry. And I'm very happy with Frank. I love this little life now. But back then I, was in my 20s and I just wanted to be in America. So originally he actually wanted to be over in the UK, not in America. So when I was fighting so hard to get my visa, and then he ended up getting this contract with the Chainsmokers and was able to just get that visa so easily, that caused tension as well. And I was kind of pissed about that. And I think I stayed in that relationship 100% longer than I should have, because we had moved over there and, I had got my visa and I worked so hard to be in that country. Like, I jumped through every fucking hoop you can imagine to get into that country. And if you want to know more about that, you can go and watch the US visa episode. But I worked my ass off like it was my dream. So me cutting that off and then moving back to Australia with, friends and family, it felt like I was also cutting off the dream of America. Even though it wasn't serving me anymore, I couldn't break up with America either. And if anybody else has moved countries before with a partner and, you've just wanted so badly to be there, but it's also extremely unaffordable. And I wasn't going to be able to live there on my own by myself. I would have had to move in with a whole bunch of people. The friends that I had over there had already got roommates. It just didn't seem like there was a possible way for me to seamlessly move into a new life as a single person in America. So yeah, honestly, I think I held on to the relationship for way longer than I should have because of that. So the isolation and spending so much time on my own in America and being downtown in a dangerous area was really starting to affect my mental health. And I felt it declining quite rapidly, spending all that time alone in a place where I didn't feel safe. I mean, for example, I will never forget walking, I think it was about 3 kilometres. And in peak summer, this is pretty hardcore as well, especially in a city that's so dangerous. I was walking to Whole Foods, and at this point I had no car and I also didn't have an American license. Obviously, it's driving on the other side of the road and the rules are different. So it is quite intimidating driving over there. Also, the amount of hit and runs that I saw when I was living there, I cannot tell you how many hit and runs I saw. That's going off track. But when I was walking to go and get the groceries for the week, this is when I was living by myself basically, because he was always on fucking tour. If I didn't go with them, I was on my own. So I was walking to go and get the groceries and I had 2 really full big brown Whole Foods bags walking back by myself, and I saw this huge gang of Bloods. If you don't know what the Bloods and Crips are, they're 2 different gangs in America. They wear red and blue. But yeah, I saw a whole gang of Bloods and they were on both sides of the street. So I had to walk past them. There was no way around it. This is in broad daylight, I would say about lunchtime. And I basically just pretty much held my breath, held my bags and walked with my head down. And because I didn't make any eye contact with them or say anything or do anything, I was just let through. And I was honestly so thankful. Like, I was actually so scared. I used to walk in the stinking hot peak summer with a hoodie on, and I would have my bum bag underneath my hoodie. So all of my phone, money, everything was hidden, and it looked like I was just super covered up and it didn't look like I was carrying anything. But that's how I walked around when I needed to do anything in downtown LA because I felt so scared. I would rather be sweating my ass off and have everything covered just in case. So that's how I was living. But when I was posting online, I'm touring with the Chainsmokers, baby. I'm on private jets, I'm making it look so much fucking better than it was. And it's just falsified. And that's, years of doing that. I did that for years. And even though I did have my fun, some of the house parties I went to, I met a lot of famous people, celebrities, had some really fun nights, and I met some really beautiful people that I will consider friends forever. But I didn't have any stability or safety when it came to a home, and where I was living did not feel like home. And it made me realise my privilege as well, being Australian and seeing the things that I saw. It made me realise just how lucky we are here and how much the people are not cared for in America by their government. That's a whole new kettle of fish. But it is something that I felt very deeply, and I don't think my ex felt on the same level as I did. I would get really upset and cry about seeing the homeless and the mothers with their children on the side of the road. And he was just what I would say a bit more disconnected from it, where a lot of the Americans there are disconnected from it because they've grown up with it. And I think he just kind of fell into being able to deal with it better than I could. Not to say that that's a bad thing. I just couldn't handle it because I just feel things so deeply and I feel really affected by seeing people hurting and struggling. There was nights where I would make more dinner than I needed for myself and I would package it up and I would give it to the homeless people downstairs. Michael used to come over all the time and we would see the homeless people, like, you know, they were kind of like the local homeless on our street, and we'd see them on the balcony, like charging their phones up in areas that they're not supposed to. But yeah, just like it was an eye-opener for him as well, like where I was living. It was like, wow, like you're surviving in this place. And I had a few instances where I had some run-ins with the homeless. Like I had a guy open up his jacket to show me a bunch of drugs. And then when I was like, I'm not interested, he actually chased me into a store that was like the local coffee shop. And it was just a scary experience to have right out the front of where I was living. So just to give you a picture of what I was actually dealing with compared to what I was posting, it was the polar opposite. Like it was literally the polar opposite, and I made it look so nice. Concrete floors, big high ceilings, aesthetically pleasing YouTube videos, content for my Instagram, smiling, happy, cute photos with my ex, making it all look like it was an amazing time, amazing relationship, interacting with all of these, you know, fan pages for us. Bro, it was a lie. I was lying. He was lying. It was not that good. The relationship was not good. We were not on good terms for a very long time. And the breakdown of the relationship was really falling apart about 2 years before I came back during COVID. And I was coming back for a green card. Like, you know, I talk about all of this in previous episodes, but this was the reality of it. It's not what it looked like. And I just want you guys to understand that that's the purpose of this episode, is to let you know that like it was a fucking struggle over there. So I'm going to give you another example of just one of the other things that happened when we were together. There was a lot of different things, but I don't want this to be, you know, an episode that's just like bashing him, because I played my part in this relationship breakdown as well. Like this is not just all him and, you know, he's a horrible person and blah, blah, blah. Like I have my perspective, and I'm sure he has his perspective as well. So I'm just going to explain another situation, but this situation in particular was something that really fucking rattled me, and I would never put up with this situation again. So I woke up one morning, we're in our first loft, so this is in the first year of being there, and I wake up in the morning and I look at my phone, because that's what I still do today, which is so bad for you, I know, but I immediately picked up my phone and I saw an email, and I was like, okay, this is a random person. And the subject was, your boyfriend is cheating on you. Of course I open it because curiosity killed the fucking cat. And my blood started boiling. And I'll never forget just how much I had to keep my cool, because if I had immediately brought this up with him first thing in the morning before he went away for the day, then he would have had an entire day to fabricate some kind of bullshit instead of being honest with me. So I'm the type of person that when I see something, I want to talk about it straight away and sort it out. Like I don't like leaving things. So my anxiety was peaking, my heart was pumping, I was acting really weird, and he picked up on that, but still left for the day. As soon as that door closed and he fucking left, I put on my personal investigator outfit, fucking glasses on, bam, spent the day getting all of the evidence together that I needed to eventually confront him. Anyway, I read the email and it explained. If you have listened to my plastic surgery episode, you will recall that I went to go and get a rhinoplasty reconstruction, and that happened in Melbourne. Now, my ex and my mum went with me for that because it was such a big surgery, and it was like I really needed people around me to look after me afterwards. Once I had come out from that surgery, I said to my ex, go, you know, they won't let you stay overnight. It was a private hospital. Just go and do what you need to do. I need to sleep. Like, thank you for, you know, being here kind of thing, but you should go and get some rest as well. So he went off and he said he was going to meet up with a friend. And I was like, okay, no worries. Didn't think anything of it because why fucking would you? Anyway, he ended up going to a house party. And at that house party, apparently, I only am finding this out like literally a year later, apparently he was flirting with another guy's girlfriend, and they were basically attached at the hip all night, and they had only met that evening. Anyway, I was none the wiser, just thought he met up with some friends, whatever, didn't think about it, didn't know about it. I was trying to recover from just a major surgery that I had had on my face. Anyway, fast forward a couple of months after that, obviously we had had some trust issues and I didn't really want him speaking to other girls because I just felt like I couldn't trust him. So at that time, he said that he needed to go to Melbourne for a business trip. And I was like, okay, no worries. Again, didn't think too much of it. And one of the evenings that he was there, I remember he specifically called me, FaceTimed me, said goodnight. He was going to bed and that was it. In this email, it states what he actually did that evening, which was meet up with that girl again, go down to the bar of their hotel, and apparently they just met up and chatted. Apparently that's all that happened. Now, I still to this day don't know, but this guy that sent the email was no longer with this girl and he decided to take it upon himself to email me this, give me all that information and say, look, if you're in an open relationship, it's all good, but I just wanted to let you know that this happened, back then. Obviously, a lot of time had passed, so it wasn't information that had just happened, but I was really wigging out about it because it's like, you met this girl when I was having serious surgery done, wasn't thinking about me recovering in fucking hospital, and you were too busy flirting with this chick and then decided to take it upon yourself and meet up with her a few months later. Anyway, I ended up speaking to the girl. She was lovely. I was pissed off to start off with, and I was like, I need you to tell me what actually happened. And she did. She showed me the conversations and she told me that nothing physical had happened. Do I believe it? Not too sure. Honestly, I have no idea whether to believe that or not. If something happened, I don't give a fuck now. But, it's really just the lying for me, calling me up saying you're going to sleep and, the intention to do something or that you knew you shouldn't have been doing was there. So that is another thing, like out of a list of a million things that, went on that made me feel really uncomfortable and distrusting of him. And he displayed that kind of behaviour frequently and it really just destroyed any chances of me being able to trust him or feel safe within that relationship. So that's another reason why I feel like I was always in my masculine with him. I didn't feel the safety to drop into my feminine and, let him lead the way because I literally couldn't trust him. Mind you, I went into that relationship thinking, he's sober. He was completely sober, which was, good for me at the time because it meant that I wasn't, getting fucked up with my partner. And that in a sense was good for me. But I did think I won't have any problems dating a touring musician because he doesn't drink and that's where most of the problems lie. That idea that I had did not check out. Yeah, that's just a PSA to anyone that's dating a musician. Honestly, not all of them, you can't put them all in the same basket, but majority of them that I met, they would just have big nights and they've got women throwing themselves at them all the time. It's not an easy industry to date in. Another thing that I found really difficult as well was just having to be on their fucking timeline. All of the girlfriends that had been, dating the boys, the chain smokers, Drew and Alex as well, it's it was a struggle for them too, always having to be working on their timeline. That was something that I just found all of the girls went through their experience. It was their career demanded to take the first position with priority. And yeah, you just kind of get known as the girlfriend. And for someone like myself who had worked so hard to make their name, to be called, so-and-so's girlfriend rather than, my full name or even just AJ, it was just, I fucking hated that. I hated that and I felt like I just lost my sense of self in a way because I didn't want to be just the fucking girlfriend that was on tour. I wanted to be doing my own thing. And I think it's really hard to gain that in that industry, dating somebody who's working that lifestyle. So that was another thing that really got to me in the relationship. I didn't particularly love that part of it. And, it depends on who you are. Some don't give a shit about it. But for me, who had worked so hard at my own brand, no pun intended, and at my own name, I just felt very demoralizing in a way. I think another thing that created a lot of friction between us was me having ADHD and him being a very different type of human to me. Like, I don't know how to explain that. My ADHD was undiagnosed at the time. I had no medication for it, and I was just very messy with things and didn't work the same way as him. Like, I have my strengths, but they're not the same strengths as what his were. And I feel like there was a lot of disconnect, and I felt very passionately about things, and I still do. But I think looking back and reflecting on the relationship, we had very different communication styles. And I was very resentful, and I don't think you should stay in a relationship when you're resentful. We never went and did any couples therapy. That was kind of just like never on the cards. But we weren't supposed to be together anyway. Like, we just didn't work. And as I said, I played my role in it as well. And yeah, it's not really pointing the finger at blaming. It's really just reflecting back on what actually was going on behind closed doors and why things didn't work out. We also had frequent arguments, which we had arguments all the time about all different shit. And that's another point. I would literally be having an argument with this guy, and then I'd be posting how much I love him and how great things are on social media, whilst just having an argument and taking a shit on the toilet and just looking at everybody's really nice comments. That's point blank how things were. Like, that is what social media is like half the time. So when it came down to us breaking up, I need to tell you guys what actually happened. So at this point, the Chainsmokers had decided to do a hiatus that ended up lasting 2 years off of social media. None of them were posting, and they all got rid of their Instagram posts. So that meant that all of the photos of me and my ex had been removed from his social media, which, if you're dating someone and you don't trust them, especially with their conversations they have online with other people, and then suddenly your entire history of your relationship is wiped, just take that in for a second. That makes you look like you're fucking single, doesn't it? Like, I was not feeling good about that. I was not okay with that. I was like, oh my God, like, this is just another fucking thing. That made me feel so, honestly, it made me feel really insecure. I was like, this isn't making me feel good at all. Like, I have been literally wiped from his social media and I don't exist, basically. So in 2020, we came over to Australia together. He saw his parents over in Brisbane, and then we flew over to Perth and spent some time with my family. And that ended up being the last time that I saw him. When he left the country that day, that was the literal last time that I saw the guy. We never got in-person closure of the relationship ending. And it ended up ending on the terms that I ended it. And yeah, it's a pretty wild thing to think about when you had been dating for 5, almost 6 years, to literally just never see that person again. It also really helps with getting over people, 100%. But yeah, it's a wild thing to think about. Like, you would never think that would happen. Anyway, going back to that visa episode, it talks about everything that happened with that. So I was stuck in Australia, essentially waiting for my green card interview. And I think it was in October 2020, I officially decided to end things. Now, I made it look like on social media that it was a joint decision and that we had both mutually decided to stay friends and everything was all good. And, you know, we just don't know when we'll see each other again and blah, blah, blah. Like, we're all good and friends. Everyone, don't worry. We're just ending the relationship now. And it was mutual decision. It wasn't. I ended it. Point blank, I was the one that ended that relationship. I had pretended, even to everyone in the Chainsmokers group of friends, like our mutual circle of friends in America, I had pretended that it was a joint decision. It wasn't. I decided that I wanted to end it. I had had enough of our communication style when we were apart, and I had realised that I did not want to be in America anymore, and I didn't want to be in that relationship anymore. I was finally around friends and family, and it made me realise how unhappy I actually was in that relationship. And that's why I've said COVID was the best thing that ever happened to me. And to be completely honest, me and my ex's relationship had been breaking down for ages. I saw him following other girls when we were apart. You know, it was just one of those things that it just didn't stand the test of time in COVID. And once I got that clarity coming back to Australia, it was pretty obvious that things weren't going to work out. So the communication was really bad between us. And in the end, I had just had enough and I ended the relationship. But I did make it look like it was a mutual decision online. I had so much anxiety posting that video where I was acting like it was all good and we were fine, and we weren't fucking fine. In fact, I felt like I had to make it seem like it was all hunky-dory because I wanted to get all of my stuff back in one piece. Like, I wasn't sure whether he was going to give me all my stuff back. You just never know. Like, once things end, you just don't know how people are going to move. And not to say that he would have done it, but I wanted all of my stuff back and I was playing very civil. I think I also, like, in my head at the time, I was like, oh, I don't want all the people that I had made friends with and, you know, all our mutual friends to like hate me and choose sides. So I felt like I had to play it really cool and just like seem like we're just like all good and there's no hard feelings there. So I went online and I did what I had to do. It was so bizarre. When I ended things, there was no tears from his side at all. Like, not one tear, not one single tear. And I feel like that just kind of says it all, because every other time I've ended a relationship or, you know, we've broken up, there's been tears on both sides. Like, and this was a very long relationship and there was nothing. There was no emotion. It was very cold. It was almost like he thought I was never going to get the balls to leave. That's what it almost felt like. He wasn't particularly great at showing emotion anyway, so I don't know why he didn't cry, but it pissed me off at the time. I was like, wow, I'm like literally bawling my eyes out and you just seem like you don't give a shit, and it's just straight into, okay, let's get your stuff all sent back. So that was what was really going on behind closed doors, and it literally took a year, an entire fucking year for my stuff to get back. On a boat. Like, it came on ship, on a container ship. All my stuff in boxes took an entire year. So I was living out of a suitcase for a year. It just goes to show that you can live really minimally. But yeah, that's what was going on. But you guys were under the assumption that this relationship was amazing, that I was living the dream in America, and that we had ended things mutually. But no, we didn't. I ended up getting his like praise of how proud he was of me for going online and speaking on behalf of both of us, because he wasn't able to post anything because of his fucking hiatus. And that kind of felt pretty shit as well, for someone to be like, I'm so proud of you for, you know, telling everyone about us breaking up. It was just like, I don't know, it was so done. By the time it was ended, it was so fucking done. It should have ended 2 years prior to that, like, period. So I'm sorry you guys were under the assumption that it was something else, but that's social media for you. I don't know what else to say. I was really sad about it behind closed doors, and I felt like shit. I wasn't happy, but for the people that were making all the cute accounts and artwork and beautiful comments, like, they pretty much got me through the shit in a way. So really the message with this episode is, please do not compare your relationship to anybody else's, especially all these perfectly curated ones online. Relationships have their ups and downs, and they are actually fucking hard work. I'm super happy in my relationship now, but we still have things that we work through. And I don't come online constantly posting about how great we are. I just post natural photos here and there of things between us and like special moments. But if I was going to post more stuff about us online, I would be way more realistic about things. And I think it's really important to share the ups and downs of, you know, partnership, because it's not supposed to be easy. You date someone and they mirror back at you the things that you're supposed to be working on within yourself. And I took a lot of things away from that relationship. Like, I did learn a lot. It wasn't a waste of time. I think I do have regrets about not choosing myself first. And I think my advice with relationships is, don't stay in something just because you've been in it for a really long time. Like, if you've been in that relationship for years and it's no longer serving you, like, please get out. Please choose you. We both shouldn't have been in that relationship for as long as we were. I'm sure he's learnt things from it as well. At the bare minimum, you learn what you do and don't want in relationship when you come out of one. And if you're going through a breakup right now, there is light at the end of the tunnel, believe me. And I think just taking the lessons that you know exactly what you want and don't want from a relationship really helps you going into the next one. And yeah, I don't have the space in my heart for hard feelings or animosity or resentment or hate towards my ex. This episode was not supposed to be hating on him. It was just talking about some things that happened and giving you a real scope of what it actually looked like. And this episode does stem into another one that I have that goes into why I actually stopped posting on social media for as long as I did. So I had to give you guys a good idea of what it was like prior in this relationship and things that happened after. So that was the purpose of why I've given you quite the insight of how things were. Obviously, I've left a lot of other situations that happened out. I also, as I've said before, I don't want to give you guys the idea that I was the perfect partner and he was the one that was all in the wrong, because I need to take responsibility for the part that I played as well. And it always takes two to tango. So it didn't work out. We're both happier for it now. But yeah, that's just the story of what it was. That's what happened, or at least it's my perspective of what happened. And yeah, just to give you a real insight of that relationship was very public, and a lot of you that, some of you might not have even known that, I was dating him and that I was over in America and I was, hanging out and on tour with the Chainsmokers, but that was my life before. And yeah, it just goes to show that the private jets and the posts and the selfies with different people and the house parties and, the glamorous nights out in Vegas and all of that shit, it just goes to show that no amount of materialistic shit will ever replace true love and the safety of love and experiencing that with someone that you adore and makes you feel valued. And it would have been so different going through that experience if the relationship had been good, but it did tarnish a lot of it. So no amount of fancy shit, fancy cars, private jets, lavish lifestyles will ever replace true love and the meaning of being happy with the simple things. It will never replace the fundamentals in your life that are more important. So as I leave you on this episode, remember, social media is often very fabricated and Instagram is a facade, and not to compare yourself, your relationship, or your life against anybody else online, because you simply do not know what is going on behind closed doors. I love you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I've been shitting myself a bit to do this one, but it's time and I'm doing it with the right intentions. And I hope it can open your eyes to the reality of, everybody is going through shit and they just don't talk about it. And honestly, I'm just so fucking relieved I don't have to pretend anymore. It feels good. It feels so good. So on that note, I love you guys. Thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next episode. And Happy New Year again. Mwah. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please give it a share. You never know who might need a little emotional content in their life. For daily feel-good posts, follow @_emotional content on Instagram and TikTok. And don't forget to hit that follow button so you're notified every time a new episode drops. Your support means the absolute world to me.